Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Hello and welcome to Women's Roundtable podcast powered by the Think Factory, where we learn how women think big and grow their business. My name is Susan Kleiner. I'm a partner with Outside General Counsel Solutions, and I'm the host of today's episode. I'm happy to have here with me today Noel Hiers. Noel is the owner of Collaborative Perspectives in Northfield, New Jersey. Collaborative Perspectives is a New Jersey women-owned small business that provides educational training and professional consultations to organizations. She also does clinical supervision to social workers seeking their LCSWs and therapeutic services to individuals and families. Noel has been in the field for over 25 years and has a depth of knowledge working with schools, organizations, and individuals. She's an LCSW and holds various certifications, including a certified sexual assault counselor, domestic violence counselor, and disaster response crisis counselor. In addition to her work with individuals, she offers trainings and seminars on suicide prevention, grief and loss, de-escalation, LGBTQIA+, wellness for students, and wellness for adults. Noel has her bachelor's degree from the College of New Jersey and her master's from Bryn Mawr. It's our absolute honor to have Noel join us here on this podcast. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here. So I want to talk to you about Collaborative Perspectives and, what led you to forming your own organization? Because I know you have an interesting history of how you got to this place.
Well, it is something I had been thinking about, and at the time I was working for one of New Jersey's school-based youth services programs, and they kept announcing that they were going to stop the funding. And I found it really stressful to be doing stressful work, doing crisis work, and then at the end of the day coming home and having to advocate that your program still exists and trying to get in touch with congressmen and getting awareness out. And so that really was what pushed me to go out and go private.
That does sound really stressful. Like your job isn't stressful enough, and then you have to wonder, am I going to get a paycheck? Which obviously we need to get paid for the good work we do. So I'm curious too, what is the significance of your name, Collaborative Perspectives?
I love the name, and I actually was surprised that it wasn't already taken when I looked at the web domains. I was like, why hasn't anyone picked this up yet? But the way I look at it, whether you're working with individuals or families or communities, everybody's coming with their own perspective. Everybody's coming with their own strengths and their own knowledge. And so particularly as a social worker, it's not about me being the authority. It's about working together. And as Stacy said in the last podcast, listening and building those connections and those collaborations. And really, the magic happens in the space between. And it's about facilitating the conversations, even in supervisions, whether I'm doing a training, no matter where I'm working, it's a two-way relationship, and we're learning from one another and growing and building from there.
Wow. Well, I got to thank you, too, for talking about the other podcast, which was with Stacy McCormick, who also appeared on the Women's Roundtable. And I'm definitely going to have to introduce the two of you because you both focus so much on collaboration and how important that is in our personal lives and in the business world. So thank you for that callback. And also, so you just talked about how you had to, it was very stressful and you didn't know about funding and you were thinking about for a while of starting your own business and you did it. Congratulations. And I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that transition? Like, what have you liked the most from transitioning from employee to entrepreneur?
Well, absolutely. The independence and the flexibility is absolutely the best. And it really was a scary transition. I have to say I started the transition with the training piece of it and the supervision piece of it. And so I kept my full-time employment, got things started, and then once things were rolling, then I left my full-time employment and started seeing individuals and families. With social work, there's a lot to do behind the scenes to get paneled with the insurance companies. And, but no, now it's nice to have a mix of responsibilities and have flexibility in my schedule. But it is scary because also the women that I looked at who were doing private practice all had spouses. So they all had that little bit of a safety net of having another income. And so for me, as somebody who's not married, I'm the only one paying my mortgage. So there was a little bit more of a terrifying leap. But one of the nice things about being horrifically underpaid is that it wasn't that terrifying. I knew that I would be able to make ends meet. I knew I'd be able to match my current salary because I was being so horrifically underpaid. You know, that even people who didn't go on to get advanced degrees make double and 3 times what I was making for the nonprofit. So that actually helped take the fear out of it. So.
Well, that's a whole other podcast about women's pay and nonprofit pay. But here, it sounds like it kind of paid off because it made it a little easier for you because you knew that you could get to that level, and it sounds like you did. Although with the ramp-up period, you were probably working triple time. You're working your full-time job and ramping up with this training and the clinical supervision. So yeah, it sounds like you have more time than you would back then. I know when we talked before, and, you know, I know when I, you know, shifted kind of from the employee to being an entrepreneur, having other people around me to be my cheerleaders, and to also assist me has been really helpful. So is that what you found as well?
Absolutely. So I have 2 sisters, and they're both brilliant. But my one sister's a librarian, and I don't know if anybody knows librarians, but they're really brilliant people. And so she really was one of the people who said, okay, enough talk already. Let's just figure out how to do this and step by step. And I think the idea of owning a business, well, for me, I was raised blue collar, like with this idea that you get a job and you work it until the day you die. And so it really wasn't even something I thought about. And so it can be overwhelming and intimidating. And so she really said, let's just figure this out step by step and make it happen. And so that's what we did. How do you register your business? How do you get your post office box? How do you figure out insurance, the web domains, all of it? We just step by step, you know, worked through it. And then consulting with my colleagues who already had gone before and done it. And because there's such a need for mental health services, it's not competitive. So everybody that's in the business is helpful of one another because there's a lot of work to be done and plenty of work to share.
So that makes it good too. So you have an opportunity to collaborate with your colleagues and your peers. And how lucky that you have a librarian sister. Shout out to her to help you figure out. I know I've heard before, you know, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. Right? So I guess when you're deciding to change your whole life, like you did, you know, you have to take it one step at a time. I really want to talk to you because I know that you're doing a lot of speaking on this. You recently spoke at Najama, and I think you have some coursework that you do on this. Your latest passion project, which is about, and obviously you're going to explain this, but utilizing nature in your practice. And what an important part nature plays in terms of mental wellness. So take it away. I'd love to hear from you. Obviously, you'll speak about it better than me.
So I have been doing presentations on the topic of Shinrin-yoku and mindfulness and the importance of reconnecting with nature, spending time with nature. There's an amazing amount of research on how spending time in nature reduces your cortisol level, improves your immune system, regulates your blood pressure. And we're living in this world where there's so much trauma, unfortunately, adverse childhood experiences. And how do we continue and then, but also really help our helping professions to continue to do the work that they do day in and day out and not get burnout and overwhelmed themselves. And we know that stress affects body aches, headaches, our digestive systems, more likely to have heart attacks, pulmonary problems. So how do we support people that are doing difficult, stressful work every day? Our firefighters, our police, teachers more and more, our nurses, our therapists. How do we help day-to-day people to just keep on doing what they're doing? And, and anybody in the helping profession to be able to take care of themselves. It is part of our code of ethics to do good self-care, but what does that mean and what does that look like? And I think we need to, in many ways, simplify it and try to do, spending time outside on a daily basis for the weekend rejuvenation. Sometimes we overcomplicate things and we need to maybe simplify things a little more.
Right. So maybe I don't need to plan a hike at some great, go do a part of the Appalachian Trail. Maybe I just need to start by taking my dog out for a walk.
Yeah, absolutely. And having some more indoor plants or just spending your lunchtime outside. So.
Yeah. Now, I know that you offer this training for first responders and crisis workers, but you also use this with your clients, like your therapy clients. Can you tell me more about that?
So when I see people, I do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. And then once we have the basics down, a walking session is something that I offer. One of my biggest pet peeves is we get so tunnel vision on evidence-based best practice, and then we lock in on something. But really, if we can take what works from different modalities and bring them all together. So we know cognitive behavioral therapy works. We know moving more is beneficial for our health, and we know nature is helpful. So why not put it all together and don't do all three at the same time? And so that's what I've been doing with people, is getting people outdoors more. And
how do your clients react to that? I mean, do they first say, what? Go for a walk?
One woman, she was referred by her friend, because with therapy, a lot of it is word of mouth. And she came right in the beginning and she said, let's be clear, I'm not walking anywhere. So it's not for everybody. And so it really is just, case by case, depending on if the person is open to it. And I'm not walking in the rain and I'm not walking in the cold. I'm a pretty fair weather person myself. So really it's just here and there. And even if I can convince somebody to go outside, it may be something where you still bring that into the education. How can they in their daily life get outside more? As you said, to walk your dog or to go for a bike ride or take your kids to the playground. Get your kids outside, get your kids hooked on fishing and, doing some more outdoor things.
That sounds great. Well, how do you incorporate this in your own life?
I absolutely make sure that I get outside. If I'm going to run, I'd rather run outdoors. If I'm going to bike, I'd rather bike outdoors. Gardening, hiking, camping. I'm hooked on waterfalls. So yeah, I get outside as much as I can. And even when I'm planning speaking engagements, I'll make sure that I'll go to hike in the area while I'm there. So.
That's amazing. Good for you. And so how long have you been doing that for? Is that a new thing, or, have you been incorporating that in your life for a while?
I was raised in the woods. So, not like a feral wild child, but, I was raised in the woods of South Jersey with 5 acres. And so I spent my childhood climbing trees. So for me, it's always just been a part of my life. So.
Well, how great that you get to share that now, with it sounds like there's, evidence behind it too, for people who like their evidence-based practices, to bring it all together. So I'm also curious, you just talked about how you grew up, and I'd like to ask, my guests a lot, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I love this question, and I thought it was a little bit funny because I think that I am my younger self, because my grandmother lived to 96 years of age. And so now when I look at my life, I think, well, I'm still on the first half of my life. Yeah. So I still am my younger self. And so I would say, stay the course, keep the faith. I have no regrets regarding the first half of my career because, again, as Stacey McCormick said, you learn so much working for a nonprofit. So all of my experience has absolutely been helpful in terms of, I know how to do PR and marketing and budgeting and how to bring together communities and do coalitions. And I mean, you name it, nonprofit gives you experience. So I have no regrets. So
that sounds great. So what do you have coming up?
Next week, I'll be speaking at the National Association of Social Workers Conference in New Hampshire. And the week after that, I'll be speaking in Connecticut. So I'm excited. I'll definitely be out in those forests as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have your hikes picked out? Have you found a waterfall hike while you're there?
Absolutely.
Well, good for you. So where can people find you, Noel?
They can go to my website at www.collaborativeperspectives.com or find me on LinkedIn.
Well, that sounds great. So the question that we ask on all of our Think Factory podcasts, what keeps you up at night?
This is a really dangerous question to ask a social worker because we are constantly thinking about child abuse and incest and violence and how to prevent suicide and food insecurity and poverty. And so all of these things race around in my head. And then I think about these commercials that are going on the radio now about giving kids gummies if they're having difficulty sleeping. And for me, it comes down to the basics of let's get these kids outside. Let's reconnect with nature. Let's connect with one another. And I know it sounds simple that connection is going to solve so many problems, but really so many of our world's difficulties could be solved if we could connect more with one another as individuals, with our planet, with our communities. So that's really what it comes down to. So yeah, how do we de-escalate on a larger scale our world, our communities, so we can live with more connection?
Well, that's for sure. I certainly believe in the power of connection, and I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to connect with you. So thank you so much for being our guest here today, and, looking forward to hearing more about the great stuff that you're doing. Be sure to check out our other Women's Roundtable podcasts so you can learn how women think big and grow their business. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much.